Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be checking out Superman issue 18 by Joshua Williamson and Jamal Campbell. Superman's adventure into the magical world continues as the powerless Man of Steel and Zatanna are forced to make a deal with Neron, who has the map they need to get into the Dark Roads, the dimension that will help the heroes circumvent Wallow's Amazos and lockdown of Earth. Clark of course refuses to make any deals with the devil, but Zatanna is more inclined to listen to the villain's offer. But he doesn't want their souls, citing how Superman's is the purest ever and he will never die, so it's pointless, and Zatanna's is practically his already, so he doesn't need to make deals with her. I'm glad we're staying away from the soul selling stuff since it's a real cliche and never really ends in a satisfying way. No one has really sort of figured that out, in my opinion. They always leave something on the table at the end of the day, or you leave a story open-ended so it can come back. Case in point stuff with like Spider-Man selling his soul in one more day and all that sort of stuff never really works out. And Williamson here comes up with a very interesting consolation. Neron wants Superman to lie, citing since he is a man of truth, lying would go against his very nature, and Neron will give him the map if he betrays his very being. Superman quickly agrees to the deal, and Neron already knows his game, hinting at the anger Superman is trying to hide, which we've seen over the last couple of issues come out thanks to Clark losing his powers and his son not being able to help out his friends, so he feels very frustrated, something which Zatanna mentioned to him is something that's very human about him. That of course he's going to feel this way, and he shouldn't hide the fact that he feels this way, because it is something that everyone gets from time to time. They get frustration. Superman reveals to Zatanna though that he just lied to Neron when he agreed to help, and he has no intention of actually lying and is just going to use the map. While Zatanna and Superman work out how to use the map though, Lois leads Mercy and the others towards the Fortress of Solitude, only to find that it has been completely wiped out, thanks to the events of Absolute Power issue 2. I really like how Williamson treats Lois's connection to the fortress, and it's not something I've really thought about before, since we obviously know it's Superman's sort of home away from home, it's his connection to Krypton, he can go there when he wants some solitude. That's why it's called the Fortress of Solitude. And Lois has that sort of connection to it as well, where she knows this is the one place her and her husband can be alone in private together, away from everyone, and that has been taken away from her. It has been really interesting seeing Williamson play with the idea that, it's not just the superheroes who are affected by this, it's not just superpowers that are being taken, it's other things as well like this. Like Lois had her livelihood taken from her when the Daily Planet was taken over by Waller, and now she's had her private life taken away from her. So it's not just the superheroes who are being affected by this, and that's something that actually comes up a lot in this issue, and we'll get to it with Zatanna a little later on in the issue. Mercy investigates the area and finds Brainiac tech is present, prompting Lois to question what the hell has happened to her husband. Superman and Zatanna meanwhile have entered the Dark Roads, which uses shadows to travel from dimension to dimension, and since shadows exist everywhere, they can use them to get into the multiverse. The map comes with some rules though, and to get them to take it where it wants them to go, Superman needs to follow his heart. Superman's dislike for magic continues here, since he cites the rules always seem to change when it comes to magic. There's always some hidden caveats or some sort of handicap, and the cost always outweighs what you want to gain from it, as evidenced by Zatanna, who is being overcome by the power of the map, since as she puts it, the map usually draws from a person's magical powers in order to be read, but since she doesn't have her magical powers, it's literally sucking the life force from her. Jamal Campbell's art has been a huge boon for this series, and I really like how he's always giving these little details that if you don't really look hard enough, you're probably not going to see, and I really like what he does with Zatanna here. Whereas while she's obviously losing her life force, she's getting, more ill looking and everything, her skin also becomes covered in trail marks and map markers, like she's literally becoming the map herself because it is feeding on her. I thought that was a really nice little detail, and I like how as the issue progresses, we see it become more and more evident on her that it's just taking her life and replacing it with this map. Like what Williamson explored last issue with Superman getting frustrated he didn't have his powers to help, Zatanna gets a moment like this issue when she's so desperate to get her magic back. However, her reasoning is more because she sees herself as nothing without her magic. Superman doesn't believe that, but Zatanna has a really interesting comeback to him where she sees Superman as someone who has a life outside of superheroing. You know, he's Superman, he's Clark Kent, and he's Kal-El. However, she's just Zatanna. That's not even her hero name, it's just her name, and it's all she is. And magic is all she is, and everyone she knows, from Constantine, Detective Chimp, the Oblivion Bar, all these things in her life that mean so much to her are connected to magic. And without her magic, she no longer has that connection to them because she just can't access them thanks to this magic not being there. So Waller's plan has affected her more so than really anyone else we've seen so far. And I really quite like that. As I said before, with Lois having the fortress taken away from her, and I like that we're exploring the fact that it's not just people with superpowers who are being affected by it, and that's not like the worst thing to happen. It's all these people who are being affected by it, like Zatanna, who are having their entire lives basically taken away from them because of what Waller wants, and I think that's really interesting. I do think it's something that probably should have been explored a little bit more, since this story arc seems to be the only one that's sort of bringing that up and bringing up the idea that people outside of the usual Batman and Superman are a bit more affected than those heroes. They're not just having their powers taken away from them, they're having their whole lives taken away from them. And it would have been cool to explore that a little bit more, but I like that we did get to actually, dip into that world a little bit. The heroes continue their journey through the dark roads and are able to open it to the House of Heroes, which has been blown apart and is falling into the bleed. Luckily, the alive but injured Dr. Light finds the heroes and warns them that the Amazos came for the house and took her powers, stranding her there. She also reveals to Superman that Waller is up to something in regards to the multiverse, which is the story we've actually been seeing over in Task Force 7's tie-in with Steve Trevor's side story, so go check that out if you haven't. It's very cool and a very cool role for Steve to be in. The heroes wonder what is blocking them from the multiverse, and Dr. Light knows what it is, but it's too late as Confusion, the reverse Batman-Superman composite Waller had on her team for ages, attacks the heroes. And it's about time this character actually appeared and actually did something, since we saw him right back at the end of Dark Crisis. So he's been on Waller's team for a very long time and hasn't actually done anything up until now, which just makes me think that maybe some people forgot that he existed. The story does, roll in together with Absolute Power's story of Waller tapping into the multiverse and gathering villains specifically from Earth 3 to help with her subjugation of Earth. So it fits in, but it feels like this character was kind of forgotten about, which is really strange because he has one of those looks that just screams like you would want to put him on everything. He's a reverse Batman Superman composite. It looks really damn cool. And over the course of the fight that Superman and Zatanna and Dr. Light have with him, we learn that he is actually from Earth 3. However, in a neat twist, we learn that he's not Ultraman or Owlman. He's someone else, but before we actually learn who it is though, Dr. Light manages to defeat him and warn the heroes that they need to escape since the house is falling into the bleed. Superman suggests using the shadows in the Dark Road to escape and trap Confusion on the house, but Zatanna has already used too much of her life force and any more will kill her. So Superman decides to take over, wanting to face his fear of magic and give in the call of the map, which he's been hearing ever since they activated it. The heroes use the map and manage to escape into the shadows just in time, leaving Confusion to crash along with the House of Heroes into the bleed. Back on the Arctic, Mercy sets Lex, Siobhan and Jimmy up with the superjet to take him back to Metropolis and to safety, while her and Lois stay at the destroyed fortress, trying to discover what happened to Superman and the other heroes. Lois manages to hack into the armor that she'd taken from Supercorp and finds a signal from Waller, who thinks the heroes are all getting ready to strike back against her on Gamora and is thus consolidating her power there. Now that's something we're going to actually see in the final issue of Absolute Power, with all the heroes attacking her, and obviously there'll be some big fight with the multiversal villains, which will be really cool. So it's cool we're getting a little bit of a setup here for that. As they try and determine what to do next, the shadows of the fortress get bigger and longer around them, putting them on edge, thinking that it's an Amazo, it's a villain. But luckily Lois recognizes the shadow and pulls her husband out of the dark roads along with Zatanna and Dr. Light. Last issue, I wondered what the book would be doing with Lois and the rest of the supporting cast for the book, since I figured Lois would, stay in Metropolis and use the Daily Planet to try and combat Waller's misinformation campaign. And this issue finally answers that, as that is exactly what she intends to do, planning on returning to Metropolis now that she knows her husband is safe and getting the Daily Planet up and running again to use the truth against Waller. Now, truth has been a big part of this issue and of this story arc really, Superman sticking to his character despite the overwhelming odds, even beating the devil thanks to the truth. And even Zatanna was affected by the truth through line, coming to terms with the truth of her life and how important magic is to her, but also how much more of a person she is even without her magic. Truth has also been a big part of the Absolute Power storyline in general and will end up being Waller's undoing, I believe, which we've been seeing sort of with the Amazos, who upon taking the heroes' powers also get their morality and are exposed to their truths, which is why they are heroes, and Waller has been manipulating them, and the Amazos are finding that out now thanks to the truth coming out. Even Brainiac Queen got the whole truth bomb dropped on her by John Kent in the last issue of Absolute Power. It's a really neat concept to base an entire event around, and a really cool way to defeat a villain, since while there is, big action and spectacle, they are actually defeating this villain with the power of truth, the strongest power of them all. While Superman, Lois, Dr. Light, Zatanna and Mercy return to the Dark Roads to go and find Batman and Wonder Woman and get ready to gear up for the attack against Waller, the pits of hell are blown open by Doomsday, who's finally broken free from his prison and sets the stage for next month's Superman books. Superman issue 18 was a fun conclusion to the Man of Steel's Absolute Power tie-ins, pitting Superman against one of his greatest weaknesses, magic, and exploring his relationship with some of the magical heroes and villains he never really gets to tangle with. Williamson wonderfully rolled in a few of Mark Waid's running plot lines into his own and tied it all together with a great truth through line, something which has been a big part of Absolute Power's main storyline. With Absolute Power coming to a close, I'm looking forward to what Williamson has in store for us in the All In initiative in October, as well as Doomsday's explosive return in the next couple of issues of Superman and Action Comics. I'm going to give this issue a 10 out of 10.